What's up, y'all? She from Legacy Hustle here. I have a little request of you. If you truly appreciate what we're trying to do here and you enjoy the show, the sharing, the transparency, and the insights, as well as the inspiration we bring you with each and every episode, I need you to help us out as well by supporting. Go ahead and subscribe, like, comment, follow, and review as we work to get the word out to more people about the show. Also, please consider sharing the show with your entire network. Thank you. Enjoy the show. What's up, y'all? This is Legacy Hustle, a show that will highlight and amplify the stories of Black entrepreneurs and their products or services that are impacting preceding generations, future generations, or cross-generationally. We use that word legacy, not only to describe the solutions that are being developed, but to also acknowledge our guests' impact on their own family and personal circles through this wealth generation and creation. The show's going to explore what their business is, how they got it off the ground, and the trials and tribulations that they've experienced on this legacy hustle journey in an effort to both inspire and educate you, our listeners, who are referred to as legacy hustlers. I'm Sheed, I'll be your host, and in this episode, we have the esteemed pleasure of talking to Kamilah Campbell of the Pink Locket. Kamilah was born in Kingston, Jamaica, and immigrated to the U.S. in the early 80s. She graduated with a BA of International Trade with a concentration in English-speaking Caribbean countries. Kamilah spent nearly 5 years working in the media and entertainment industry, specifically Viacom, while completing her MBA focused on media and entertainment from the Metropolitan College of New York. The Pink Locket was established in 2008 when it was first launched on Etsy. Coming from a culturally rich background, Kamilah's inspiration comes from arts, shapes, city landscapes, and even her customers. And you'll see that through and through the pieces. They've been featured in a variety of different movies and TV shows and media outlets such as Design Sponge, Etsy's editor section, Essence, BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, The Grio, Hallmark, Lifetime, and Netflix. Kamilah, full of knowledge, full of wisdom, full of grace, and extremely humble, drops a lot of gems in this episode. Pay attention, be inspired, be motivated, and be open to gems that she drops on her legacy hustle as you think about your legacy hustle journey. And without further ado, let's get into it. All right, Kamilah, thank you so much for being here with us today. Really appreciate your time, your energy, the words of wisdom you're about to impart upon our legacy hustlers.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. We're going to dive straight in. So tell us about the Pink Locket.
Okay, so the Pink Locket, I'm a self-taught handmade jewelry designer. The Pink Locket is a handmade jewelry design company. Been around since 2008, came up right around the Maker's Gonna Make, era of the early form of Etsy. I think I started on Etsy maybe 2 years after they launched. So we're talking about 2000, I started my Etsy shop in 2008. I think Etsy came in around 2005, 2006. Can't remember. Exactly.
Okay. Early adopter over here. Early adopter.
Yes. So I've seen the evolution of the handmade market. And I started the company during a time when we were obviously going through our recession, where a lot of people were losing their jobs. The housing market was crashing. It was a lot of uncertainty. So during that time, my husband and I relocated to Atlanta, right outside of Atlanta. We live in Douglasville. For the simple fact of we had just gotten married a couple of years prior. We were looking to, just find somewhere affordable to buy a house. And Georgia at the time was just like it, you were able to do that. So we relocated down here. He moved first, and I came about a year and a half later because I was still doing my MBA while working. I was working in New York City in the entertainment industry. During that transition, it was a bit of a rough period because of the recession. He was, in the midst of really trying to find, work here in Atlanta. I was able to transition down here with another career, another, full-time job. So in the midst of that, I'm like, you know what, let's just pick up, I dabbled a little bit in handmade jewelry design because of my aunt. She showed it to me and, in my mid-teen years. So I was like, let's just see where this can start. So it started off something as just a hobby, just to generate a couple of dollars here or there. And then I think my love for it just continued to grow. Sorry. I've always been an entrepreneurship mindset ever since I was little. So it's kind of just something that just came naturally to me. So I started it off. Here we are jumping into 2022. Not only has the type of jewelry that I've created evolved immaculately, but also just how I run my business. Running it from something that was a hobby to now something that is a full-fledged business. There was a lot of trial and error, a lot of DIYs, a lot of, just pivoting and stuff. So what gave me the advantages that not only did I have the career mindset, but I also have the business mindset because, I was a business major. I had my MBA. So I was able to implement a lot of that into the business itself. Here we are today. I do a lot of metalsmithing, self-taught metalsmith. I did get a little bit of training a couple of years ago, just to kind of sharpen skills, learn new skill sets. Because I believe as just not even an entrepreneur, just as a person wanting to grow, you're always a student. You never stop being a student. So, and it's just helped to propel my business to run it more efficiently, be more productive, cutting out the things that doesn't work. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. You've given a lot of sort of background into where the Pink Locket has come from. You spoke about the tie back to legacy, right? So you had an
Mm-hmm.
aunt who it sounds like was
Mm-hmm.
instrumental in exposing you to the craft in the first place.
Yep.
And it was initially more of a hobby. And so with what you were talking about that was taking place within the realm of 2008 with the shift and the move, it just precipitated this need to turn this hobby into something that generated and created additional dollars for you
Right.
and for your family. And so thank you for talking about, that genesis and where it began. What do you think is one really exciting thing about your business today? And you spoke about the background where it came from, but talk about today. What's something really exciting about the Pink Locket?
I think what's really exciting is that over the past maybe 3 years, the company has just been featured in a lot of mainstream outlets. And it came from a time where I think in the beginning you strive to be in all these different outlets because you want the recognition, you want the most importantly you want the sales, but just to have it come full circle, you're like, wow, so all my work isn't necessarily in vain, right? But just even how I've evolved as a person. Entrepreneurship teaches you a lot about yourself, the patience, the sacrifices. And I think I have three sons. The youngest one, he sees my entrepreneurial spirit. So even times when I want to give up or something, he's we call him the wise one because he'll kind of just has this wise wisdom, why don't you try this? Or, he'll leave the other day, he left an inspirational card. We have inspirational cards on my desk because I guess he was feeling out my mood the day before. He's like, you need a little bit of inspiration.
I love
So,
it.
and I even see the entrepreneurial spirit in him per se, and the things he says, the things he does. So you don't realize that what you're actually the people around you are actually watching you. You know what I mean? It's important to them. So I think growing the company from, it being what it was to where it is today, and to just see the influence that it has on the people around me, I think that actually is what kind of makes me want to keep going, want to keep evolving it, seeing how far I can go.
Message their
Yeah.
legacy hustlers. What you're really hearing come through is that legacy impact, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, Camilla was influenced by her aunts, and as she is developing and honing this craft and this skill set with growth mindset, figuring out new ways to constantly improve upon her skill. She's also exposing her family members, her sons, to what she's doing and how she's growing this thing that she's passionate about. And that is creating ripples in their
Mhm.
lives, right? That continued
Mhm.
legacy. Thank you for that. Another thing that you touched on was around some of the money elements. So just
Mhm.
really curious, when going back to 2008, where did you get the
Okay.
money to start things?
Um, okay. So it was basically coming personal money. When I first left college, I was my dad made sure that we were very well equipped when it came to investing our money. His word was, you need to hide as much as you can from the government, right?
Too funny.
So, his thing, and my mom is just like, you know what, you don't have, I was fortunate enough to graduate undergrad with no loans. The only loans that I took out was for my grad school. So I was able to sock away, I was able to max out my 401k, to be honest.
Right.
So during that time, from when I left college to when I moved down here, I mean, I was maxing it out. So, and in my mind, I'm like, that's a lot of money, you know?
Yeah.
So, I had the ability to take out loans against my 401k to kind of like, do certain things in my business, right? Um, and I think it just came from that early discipline of making sure that, it doesn't have to be a lot of money you're saving, but definitely like, those investment options, 401k, you're young, you don't have any much of expenses. So, it behooves you to do that because that's the source of, income for you in the future for whatever you do. It's your money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You decide how you want to direct it. So,
Yeah.
I did do that. And then also just personal funds. The good thing about it is that, it was relatively low startup. I didn't require a whole lot of equipment, a whole lot of machinery. I run it out of my house, so the overhead was relatively low. I was probably spending more money, probably doing shows and buying supplies and things of that nature. And then at the time, marketing, which was very low because, it wasn't a lot of, during that time, organic posts on Facebook worked really well. So,
Yeah.
right. So that's where a lot of the startup money for me actually came from.
Came
I was
from.
fortunate. Yeah.
And so what you're hearing from Camilla is the ability to really tap into your 401k, right? And
Hmm.
so a lot of different 401ks have options where you can borrow against them, and they'll provide you loans. And typically they have really good rates, right?
Yes. Hmm.
So it behooves you, as she's already stated, make certain that if you have the ability to put money away into 401ks, it doesn't just lock it away until you get old enough to disperse. You can also actively borrow against and pay those funds back. Thank you for that tip. And so, as you think about how much you made that first year when you started, things off versus where you are today, would you like to share a little bit about that?
So I'm very diligent with numbers. So when you add up what you actually spend and what you actually make, most entrepreneurs are going to find themselves at a loss the first few years. That's completely common. It's normal because it's a new business. So to
Hmm.
be honest, the first year was sort of a hobby. Second year got a little bit more serious. I mean, it took a while for me to actually turn a profit. I'd say probably not until maybe my fifth year,
Mm,
and and the jewelry market, it is very saturated, but I think there's everybody's selling everything. So I don't think there's a market that's not saturated. It's just how you put your spin on it.
right.
So, I was just, it took a little bit of, it took a while for me to actually make a profit, if I'm being honest. But that's just part of the process.
And what was it for you that kept you motivated, right? So here you are, you're talking about it took almost 5 years before you started turning a profit.
Hmm.
How did you stay engaged? Like you talked about a part of the motivation for this came from wanting to bring in some extra dollars to help around the house, right?
Hmm.
So what kept you engaged?
I think the fact that, it was a creative outlet to my corporate career. A lot of times, we're good at switching up the hats, right? We go in, we got this face on, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, all right,
Code
and
switching is
then you
real.
come home and you're like, "Whew, now I can really peel back and just jump in and do what what really, helps me mentally, just kind of be creative. You're kind of like the author of this. You write it how you want to. No one's telling you how to do it or whatever. So it was almost like, it was definitely like an outlet to my corporate career, to be quite honest. So I think that's what kept me going. And then as I continue to read and continue to, get in and more knowledge, I'm like, wait a minute, it's cool. Like, there's nothing wrong with corporate America working. It's fine. But if you're thinking about growing, like you said, a legacy, some sort of wealth to pass down to your family, you have to be very, I call it curating your career. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to have definitely multiple streams of income and revenue if you want to be able to have money to be able to do things. You know what I mean? It's like, corporate America is cool. Like I said, it has its perks. But if you're looking for bigger picture to really, really push the limits, there's nothing wrong with having, a little hustle here to kind of like propel you in that direction.
Yeah.
So I think that also kept me going. She's like, oh, wait a minute, this is another stream of income for us. Like, I got to keep going. And the losses that I had, it wasn't detrimental to the point where, oh man, I'm like thousands of dollars in the hole.
Yeah.
I was probably maybe a few hundred, like it either broke real even or there was a loss. So it wasn't a huge
it wasn't
loss
that significant
to the point where exactly.
All right. So you would say about 5 years in is when you started to make money. So that was probably about 2013. So 2013 versus 2022. Talk to us about the difference in like where you're at in terms of what you're bringing in.
Right. So now, so it slowly grew from 4 figures to 5 figures. And we actually just hit 6-figure mark in 2020. And yeah.
But again, legacy hustlers, what you're hearing is a journey of persistence, right? She didn't say that she was making 6 figures out the gate. She said she was at a loss initially. She recognized the fact the market is absolutely saturated, but she had to put her spin and actually continue delivering and creating those goods in order to get to where she's at today. Right. So there's a mix of persistence, there's a mix of grit, and there's a mix of ensuring you're imbuing whatever it is that you're creating with your character, your story, you, in order to get it to where it is today. Go ahead. Sorry. Right. You look like you're about to say something else. And I just wanted to throw that in there.
And when you look at the timeline, people are like, well, that, they may say that kind of took a lot of time to do that. Well, everybody has a different story, number one. And when you're the person doing every single thing, and I mean from making the product to marketing the product to hopping in my own photo shoots, it's like literally like you're like a one-man show. So, you got to give yourself a little bit of grace too, I
Not
think
to mention the fact that she has a full-time job.
I have a full-time job.
She has a family, a wife and a mother, right? Right. Like, it's not like she's just sitting here and this is the only thing she's doing, right?
No.
All right, go ahead, Kamilah.
So exactly. I'm glad you pointed that out. So you have to give yourself a little bit of grace, and you can't really compare yourself to others as well, which is, kind of hard to do, especially with how social media is now. But, so now jumping into, 2020, let's jump to 2020 and we actually turned 6 figures. And it actually came out of like nowhere. We all know what went down in 2020. We had the pandemic. So then we had all of a sudden supply chain issues. People weren't able to get what they needed because obviously we get in a lot of imports from other countries. So that affected a lot. So a lot of people started turning to small businesses. So you slowly saw from February up until maybe June, right? May, June. George Floyd, unfortunately, happened. Yep. So during that time, it's like the Band-Aid was ripped off of America, and we just completely, it was just exposed how justice in this country is obviously not leveled.
Not just. Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I like to call it the awakening. Suddenly what a lot of us as Black members of the community and seeing what's going on, we've always known it's existed. Suddenly everybody else in the country realized
the light bulb going on as well. Right. So a lot of people started flocking like, oh, wait a minute. Black owned businesses. They've been underserved for quite some time now. So let's run out and the amount of massive support that a lot of us Black owned businesses saw during that summer was like, we are grateful. I haven't spoken to an entrepreneur that isn't grateful. But at the same time, it kind of like bittersweet, because a man had to die
in order to bring light
for this to come to light. So while we're all processing all these hurt feelings, right? For a lot of us. And now we have this influx of support. So in our heads, we're kind of like, well, number one, is this support going to stick around? Like, it's like, I really can't plan for next year, because I don't know what percentage of these customers are going to drop off.
Right.
I don't know who's just supporting just to support because I'm Black owned, who's going to stick around, who's a troll purchasing from me just to go give me a bad review, because that happened a lot during that time too, where you had individuals purchasing from Black owned businesses just to give them bad reviews. You know what I mean? So it was a mix of feelings. It was kind of like, I myself didn't know how to process it, but you kind of just ride the waves. You ride the waves just to see how it goes for the rest of the year. So then, 2021 came in, same thing, still support. And it's just kind of like, well, I'm just going to have to plan out the next year based on what I think, what I know, and pivot along the way. So, thankfully, I was able to finally hit that 6-figure mark, but it was overwhelming because, like I said, I'm by myself. So I started having to, pull in like, my niece, my nephew, young, hungry entrepreneurs, themselves.
Back to that legacy.
Yeah. And the thing about it was like, I was having them do things from creating jewelry pieces to doing some marketing. They've never done it in their lives. And with me, they know look, I'm going to throw you into it. Let me know if you have any questions. You're going to make mistakes. So just take that out of your head. But they learned a lot. This year, I brought in another high schooler to help me with production. She's sharp. You know what I mean? She's learning a lot. I hired a virtual assistant. So now I'm able to pull in the help that I need because, we hit a number that allowed me to
enable
do that.
It. Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that.
And the other thing that I love saying, I know I keep coming back to it, it's one of my favorite words, that legacy, right?
Yes.
She's talking about the ability to teach other members of her family that same skill that her aunt started teaching her, in addition to being able to figure out, how do you market? What does it look like to have a business? All these other business elements that she's been learning and she's been growing on since back in 2008. So again, Kamilah, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
What do you think has been one of the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome since starting this business? And you shared some really good ones, but just interested in another one that you may have.
I think there's probably two biggest challenges. One in the early stages was comparing myself to other entrepreneurs who are in the same space, and social media plays into that too, kind of plays with your head, because you're kind of like,
yes, it does.
That person did that. And then and then when you really find out, it's like, no, it's all a horse and it's all smoke and mirrors. Like, what am I comparing myself to? I know my situation, but I don't know theirs.
Right.
That whole of quit your day job and kind of, run your own hustle. Well, there's plus and minuses to that, and the reason why I've decided to stay in corporate America a little bit longer is one things I've mentioned, benefits and 401k, right? You have to be sure that you have a certain amount of a safety net before actually just leaving your corporate job. And I think I have, kids, I have a family. I can't just walk away knowing, we need benefits, healthcare coverage, things of that nature. So it kind of I kind of had to put that into perspective, that everybody's, leave your day job is not going to look like mine. Also, like salary. I've been in corporate America for a long time, so my salary is a little bit more competitive versus somebody who might not. I don't know. So,
right.
I had to get out of my head of comparing my story to other people's story. We each have our own individual story, and that's what makes us unique. 2020, in the midst of the whole, support Black businesses, I caught COVID. I was out of commission for about a good 2 weeks. No jewelry was being made. I had to, really email customers. Some of them canceled their orders or things like that. It was overwhelming, and I was just like, at that point, I was like, I can no longer do this by myself. I need the help,
Yeah.
so I need to get the help, because if I'm going to sustain this as a business, it has to be able to run without me in the picture,
Mm, that's real.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. You've spoken about, again, a number of different challenges, obstacles you've had to overcome. What are some sacrifices that you've had to make for your business?
I would say things like we weren't able to travel as much as we wanted to. You know what I mean? We all love traveling. I think we started traveling a little bit more over the past, prior to COVID. A couple, a little bit more often, but that's one thing we love to do. We weren't able to do that.
Right,
you know.
right,
So as far as like um being able to go out and do things, not necessarily from a money aspect, but my time. Like once I'm done working, I have to really block out my days and be really strategic about it. I can't just get up and just go hang out, or, be like, well, no, I can't do this because on Saturday between this time and this time I have, I'm building something, and a lot of times, people don't really understand that, you have to really, as an entrepreneur, you have to make sure that you surround yourself with other entrepreneurs or other people who understand, what it takes.
right.
Everybody's not understanding of that at times, and it can kind of be, it can kind of be frustrating. It's like, we didn't see you. Why'd you miss this? Why'd you miss that? Well,
I'm trying to
I
run a
can't necessarily
business.
do that, right?
All
Welcome.
right.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the future, right?
Mhm.
As you look towards the future of where the Pink Locket is heading, and you think about where you've come from 2008 to 2022, if we look at that same amount of time going forward, where do you
Mhm.
see the Pink Locket going?
Definitely propelling into a bigger company. I really like the fact that everything is still handmade. Everything's kept in house. And if there's anything that the pandemic taught me, is that there are definitely benefits to keeping a lot of things in house,
In
particularly when it
house.
comes to manufacturing and creation of your goods. A lot of businesses struggled because a lot of them were, having things imported into the country that were made somewhere else, that caused a lot of uncertainty for a lot of businesses. So definitely just kind of like growing the business to where I'm not necessarily the one manufacturing everything myself, but I have, individuals um, helping me out doing that. So kind of like building it on that grander scheme. And then also just um, influencing and trying to help other budding entrepreneurs who are young, realizing like, I mean, now we're in a day and age where pretty much you can really curate your career. Like you can be the driver of how you want to do this, and it can actually be done, right? Those days of, having to become the traditional, especially for us Caribbean people, where it's just like, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be this. Well, no, now you have many options,
Right.
so just showing that everybody has some sort of entrepreneurial spirit in them, so definitely working with younger minds and kind of like helping them, tap into their own entrepreneurial spirit. And then definitely expanding the types of products I'm creating. I do jewelry now. I would really love to move into home and living, home decor, things of that nature that still have the metal and jewelry aspect to it, but more decor for your homes.
I dig it. I dig it. And absolutely amazing vision, right?
Yeah.
I think that when I've asked this question to some of our previous legacy hustlers, uh, they haven't had as thoughtful a response. You've had, multiple different areas that you've highlighted, right? The
Hmm.
ability to have impact on others by teaching others the craft, the ability to position and pivot into a new space that you're currently not extending your offering into, right? And then just the continued growth of being able to lean into that quality of handmade jewelry. And I just want to remind our legacy hustles, like when we talk about handmade jewelry, like literally taking the components, she goes into her workshop and she's building. If you go on her website, you'll be able to see a small video where she's demonstrating that. And so you can see the artisan and the love and just the creativity that pours forth from her as she's developing all of these magnificent things. The other thing I'm going to toot the horn on is, and she kind of said it in passing earlier, but her jewelry is also ending up on different shows that are out there that we watch on, your Amazon Primes and your Netflixes and your different shows that are out there. So her art/jewelry is truly being embraced on multiple fronts. And it's absolutely amazing to watch her success continue. And hopefully, you go and check out the website and you see some stuff that you really like and you're able to support her businesses as well. Kamilah, all right, so 5-minute hustle. This is a call and response segment where our legacy hustlers are able to learn a little bit about sort of what fills your business mindset cup, how you move, things that they can apply for their own legacy hustle that they're potentially thinking of. What initially held you back from being an entrepreneur, and how did you overcome it?
I don't think anything held me back. I was always, I always knew I'd own something.
Okay. So you were just always and you did mention that earlier.
I always went against the grain. We went even in undergrad, like I created my own major because it wasn't available. I sought out an MBA program that was 1 year just because I didn't have the time to spend for 2 years, Right. So I was always looking for things. Yeah. No.
Yeah. What I'm really hearing from her as she's sharing is there's this creative element, right? She looks at what the world is offering and tries to figure out how she can apply it in her own life. And that is a very powerful thing, right? Like what's out there, does it fit with what you're trying to achieve, what your goals are? And if not, how can you tweak or modify it so that you're still able to learn, grow, or extract that value, but apply it in the way that you're living your life? Powerful. What's the best business advice you've ever received?
To definitely always plan things out. Things don't always go as planned, but you need to work from something. And so that you don't waste your time and you don't waste money. And also don't be afraid to try different things. I think, with entrepreneurs, we get so caught up in this being our baby that sometimes it's hard to kind of hear the truth about what works and what doesn't work. Just keep an open mind. Just keep an open mind and realize that, in order to grow, you're going to have to pivot and you're going to have to change them.
Flexibility, adaptability, it's all key, right? Yes, so ensure that you're listening to whatever listening systems or mechanisms are in place for your business. What are your customers saying? What are your clients and partners talking about? And ensure that, yes, keep your eye on the goal in terms of why you started and where you're trying to go, but try to be flexible and ensure that you're integrating the feedback into what's happening so that you maintain your momentum and maintain that success. Kamilah, what would you say is the best business book, magazine, podcast, etc.? What is it that you go to that fills up your business mindset cup that you want to share with the legacy hustlers?
There's variations of different. So The Alchemist, I always recommend that book, whether it's audio or whatever. I think that's just a great book for anybody to read or to listen to that has a dream they want to fulfill. As far as podcasts are concerned, gosh, podcasts are my way for kind of taking a break from the regular, work and
that's okay. What are some of the entertaining ones?
I love short stories. So I love, Snap Judgment? They have a lot of interesting short stories. I do listen to Carry On Friends, which is kind of like a mix of the Caribbean American experience. What else am I listening to? I have a lot of financial podcasts that I listen to. Invested, to kind of like, because I always think that always investing your money and growing your money is also important as an entrepreneur, regardless of the industry. What else? The book that I'm reading now, it's not necessarily an entrepreneur book, but it's a mindset book, particularly for traders, but it's called Trading in the Zone, where you kind of like get your mind right. A lot of times what holds us back from a lot of things is just our mindset, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, and it's because of how we grew up. what we were programmed to think. So it's kind of like deprogramming your mind so that you can realize that you can accomplish more than you believe that you can.
Mm, mm. So again, Legacy Hustlers, she's dropping nothing but gems right now on fire, right? So talking about the fact that she taps into different books, magazines, podcasts, etc., not only for energy around her business, but also to re-energize herself, to fill her cup back up. So she listens to things that entertain her as well. And then, she had spoken about it earlier. She's brought us back to it, multiple streams of income, right? So she has a corporate job. She also has her business, and then she's leaning in to learn, right? That growth mindset again.
Mm-hmm.
How else can she make her money work for her and her family, right? So always try to think of different ways to ensure that you are increasing the ability for you to pass on that legacy. Favorite online tool, app, or internet resource that you use for your business that you weren't aware existed before you started your business, and now it's like, I don't see how I'd be able to function without this thing.
QuickBooks. and you, from early on, whether you think it's a hobby, whether you think it's a business that you're going to run, keep track of your numbers. Don't commingle expenses, especially now with the IRS and that third party, apps where anything over $600, you better be. So even, and most importantly now, just keep everything separate. QuickBooks really helps.
And then just for individuals that may not be aware of QuickBooks is, can you give us like the one line high level, this is what QuickBooks is?
So basically QuickBooks pulls in your income, your revenue, your expenses from all of your accounts and helps you allocate where the funds are going. It's almost like an accounting software, for us entrepreneur, and they have different levels, so even if you're a self-employed or just someone doing it as a hobby, you can start with the basic
there it
plan.
Is.
As far as growing my business, Facebook Business Suite, I use a lot. I run a lot of ads and stuff through Facebook and Instagram, and I tap in. They have tons of resources, tons of videos. And within the past year or so, there's been a huge push to help small business owners on these platforms. Take advantage.
I need to tap into that to help scale the podcast. So I'm going to go take a look at that after we get off.
Definitely. And then there's a group that I joined on Facebook called Meta Elevate, which is ran by a Facebook community, someone who works for Facebook, particularly to help us people of color grow our businesses and grow our even content creators too. So definitely a group on Facebook that you probably should be in. And then Traffic Sales and Profit, ran by Lamar and Ronnie Tyler. Definitely a mindset of individuals. They have a community that helps you kind of just propel yourself forward. It's definitely a very entrepreneurial mindset type group that anyone can benefit from. Yeah.
You have shared a plethora of resources for our Legacy Hustlers today. And as always, Legacy Hustlers, I'll make certain that I drop into the show notes all of these different links and connection communities, resources, books that she has spoken about today. All right. So fear not. You have been a wealth of knowledge. Hearing your journey and your story, just being Superwoman, right? In terms of all the things you've been able to tackle and the success you've had so far. Thank you for sharing that journey and that story with us.
Thank you.
Leave our Legacy Hustlers with a final word of wisdom or inspiration that you'd like to kind of close out
on. Definitely take care of yourself. I think when it comes to trying to, run your own hustle or your business or whatever, we tend to not really take care of ourselves. Get your sleep, get your exercise in, have a little bit of fun, because your business or whatever it is you're trying to grow is not going to be able to grow unless you are in the mindset and the health to be able to do it.
Powerful words, just as you've done the entire show. Thank you so much again for being here.
Thanks
really appreciate your energy, your time, and the wisdom you shared. What's up, Legacy Hustlers? I hope your cup is overflowing with inspiration, motivation, and knowledge after listening to our guests today. And if it was, don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, comment, and share with your friends so we can continue to grow the base of listeners. Shout outs to Chris from Sideline Records for always producing an amazing episode. Jonathan Leonard, we see you. Thank you for the intro music. And to our listeners, until the next time we connect, please don't get in your own way in the pursuit of your dreams.